David Uosikkinen in the Pocket is sponsored by the School of Rock Main Line. I'd like to thank the School of Rock Main Line, located at 511 Old Lancaster Road in Berwyn. You can visit their website at schoolofrock.com. Ask for Dave Marsh or Rick Allison.
Hey, everybody, I'm Andy Weinberg, and welcome to episode 126 of the David Uosikkinen in the Pocket podcast. I actually think, guys, I was off on my numbers the last couple of weeks, so which I guess is not as bad as like a musician getting on stage and saying hello, Cleveland, when he's in Detroit. But
Not bad at all, Andy.
But 126, you get over 100. It's hard to keep track. But
exactly.
Yeah, episode 126. Good to see you, Dave. Good to see you, Fred. And,
likewise,
Dave. I know you just got back from a quick trip to Germany with the Hooters. So are you? How's the jet lag?
It's there. Hey, listen, the flight isn't bad. It's the delays that we experience now flying. Coming back, we got there. We were no trouble getting there. Getting home, it was like a day process. Because once one flight gets messed up and you have a connecting flight, everything gets screwed up. So It was a bit of a trek. I got home about 1 a.m. on Monday morning. And then, of course, I stayed up to watch the Eagles. And that was kind of misery. And, here we are just like hoping for better things. And the fact that we have our guest today is making things better. And it's always better when I see you and Fred. It makes my day better. So all's good here in Wayne, PA.
Right on.
Yeah, it's good for all of us to be back, and of course, Rich in the studio doing a great job as always. And I know you guys love when we have drummers on this podcast, because you guys love talking drumming. But we have a great one today who has played with you name it, he's played with them, tons of legends, and he's got a really interesting life and career. His name is Eric Parker. So let's bring him on, Rich. Let's get Eric. There he is.
Hi.
Hey.
How are you?
EP, my man.
All right.
How are you, bud?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
We can't complain.
Good luck with that jet lag.
Well, you know the deal. You did plenty of that, so. But that's the least of our worries. It's one of those things. And I'm just glad to be back. It was a fun trip over there, but it was a quick hit back here. And I was really looking forward to talking to you. I mean, this is long overdue. I think as long as we've been doing the podcast, you were always somebody I really wanted to get on to talk to you about, because I remember, Eric, seeing, we all have a mutual friend in Nick Jameson.
Yes.
And Nick, who is a legend from Philadelphia with the American Dream and all the solo stuff that he did was just so great. Was someone I've been following feels like my entire musical career. And I remember seeing you when Nick recorded Already Free. That solo record that he did at Woodstock, and you were. Nick played drums, but the other drummer was on the record was you. I think it was Nick played all the other instruments, I believe. And then I saw you play at the Bijou Cafe. I believe it was 1978. And if I'm not mistaken, maybe it was a Gretsch kit you were playing back then. But I remember you were just killing it, and you had that great sound. You emulated the sound from Nick's record, which is so unique at the time. Remember? Had that poof sound on the snare drum.
That's right.
You had that going live, man. You were so great that night that I remember. I never forgot. And then of course, I followed your brother and know the whole. It's a great story, and I'm so glad that you could join us, because we are all big fans, my friend.
Oh, thank you. It was funny when I first met you. To Abe Hock. I went to go see the Hooters at Mid-Hudson Civic Center with Abe Hock. And he said, you want to go backstage and meet everybody? And I was like, I'm a little bit shy. I said, well, if you go with me, I'll go down. And then I came down and, hi, I'm Eric Parker. And you knew who I was. And it blew my mind. I was like, what? At that point, I'd only done the Rhinestones record and Nick James, Andy Pratt and then Nick Jameson. It was I'd only done 3 records, so I was blown away that you guys knew about Nick Jameson.
Yeah, So and we knew. You know, I was like, I got to meet this guy, and then with the fortunate, I think was that Stony Brook College, or there was another place I saw you at another college as well.
Oh, it might have been.
Yeah,
with Nick,
but it was. But I've been a fan for a long time, so that was really cool meeting you when we were out on the road together. I said, this guy's really great, and you've been playing drums your entire life too, right?
Yeah. My dad was an artist. He passed away last December, but he was an artist with always drumming on the side. With bands. He had his own band, Bob Parker's Jive 5, and swinging Chicago stuff, not like cool jazz, fun. Monk and Miles, that kind of stuff. Really, I mean, he was not a soloist at all, but what a great groove player he was. So with 4 other brothers, 3 of them also drumming, we would finish dinner and really make a beeline for the one drum set in the house.
Really? Wow.
It made us really competitive in a supportive way, but if I learned some bottom fill, Chris would come up to me and go, wait. What is that? So there was a lot of those kind of moments of everyone supporting each other. Eventually we got drum sets for almost every floor of the house. We had a 3-floor house and I think 5 drum sets at one point.
Wow.
I remember one year Mom gave us all headphones for Christmas. So,
Perfect.
So the music wouldn't be, you'd be hearing Hendrix downstairs and Humble Pie on the 2nd floor. Miles Davis all blaring, but it was great. That record with Nick was, we were up in Vermont in the middle of nowhere at Sun Shredder Studios. And it was just me and Nick up there. He was really supportive. I mean, really great ideas. Some of those, like the breakdowns, we had a brush that was hitting a cowbell and a woodblock, but he mic'd the air of the brush going by. So it was not unlike a tambourine where you get a pre-hit from a shepa, and it was on I know what it is on the breakdown on that. I was like, oh, what a great idea. He had tons of ideas like that. And it just Paul Butterfield's the only other musician on it. So Paul came and played on a couple tracks. So that was really cool. It was the only record he called him the Honer Moaner. And he'd been wanting to use that term forever. So anyway, it was great that Nick, and he's still going. He's still cooking.
Well, we played together. I played with Nick. Well, he's living in Iceland, and our good friend Don Van Winkle, rest in peace, passed away last year, and we put together a memorial show for him. And Nick, who played with him when he was a teenager, got on a plane and flew in from Iceland and wrote a song on the spot. I think he asked the audience to kind of shout out what's something that people don't know about Winkle, and someone yelled out, he's a barber. So he wrote a song called The Barber Blues right on the spot. That's Nick, it was brilliant, and he was great, and he's still such a mean guitarist. He just when he starts playing the blues, it's like, he's the real deal, that guy.
Totally, he's got the edge. He has the same edge Jeff Beck has. That's what I liked about him.
Yes,
it really bites on guitar.
I
love it.
And also Nick told me this, which was pretty amazing, and I didn't know it. Later on, I became friends with Shane Fontaine. And I didn't know that when you played the Bijou, the other guitar player was Shane.
That's right. Yeah, Shane was in it. Yeah.
What a band you had. Holy cow.
That's right. Man. Bonnie Hayes from the new combo from San Francisco. She had her own thing. She had her own records. And she was really good too.
Wow, man. Wow. Yeah. What a scene. I mean, I love the one thing that being friends with Nick is sometimes he would post photos. And I see these photos from Woodstock where you had your whole crew, like that the musicians that hung out there, and it was these reunion picnic you would do, and there would be Paul Butterfield, there'd be some of the Parker brothers and Nick, and just who's who of just great musicians that we grew up listening to, and are all in this one incredible community.
Yeah.
Amazing. You know?
I'm kind of amazed all musicians don't move here because it's so incredible here.
It is.
I work nonstop. There's like 30 studios. I mean, out in the woods. So and then all these musicians who are here, that are excellent. Like Nick.
Well, we hung out. I remember when I came up to do that Robert Gordon show, and we hung out. I stayed at a friend's place that was right down the street from where he was David Bowie's and Iman's neighbor.
Oh yeah.
And then I think Todd had a recording studio right down the street, Todd Rundgren.
That's right.
So I mean, it was like, and that little theater there was super cool.
That's right. Yeah, the Bearsville Theater. Yeah. Yeah. I'm on Mink Hollow, which was where Todd's studio was too.
I was right down the street from you. I
remember you were like looking for a place, and I left, and I was like, I wonder where you stayed. And you said, I stayed on Mink, actually on your road. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, that was you did great with Robert Gordon that night. I know he was having some trouble, but you just stuck in there. It was really,
I just didn't look his way. I didn't look his way. He had some moments, and we know all the Robert Gordon stories. And I said, just stay at a line of fire, man.
Yes,
me and Kenny Aaron said, Kenny's like that place, and he's like, don't even look my way. He does. I look at the guitar player.
Do not meet eyes with me.
I know. Oh my goodness, man.
But you sounded great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Always do that. That night at the Hooters was insane. How good you were.
Thank you.
It was like it reminded me of like a better version of Duran Duran.
Thank you.
The stage set was incredible and really amazing.
Oh, thank you, Eric.
You still are. You're ongoing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Dave, Eric and Dave, was that the first time you guys met in person? Eric, when you went to see that Hooters show and then you came backstage, or had you met? Okay, so
I think that was the first time.
It was. It was. And it was a real honor meeting him, And it's weird. Years later, I remember your brother Chris was playing with Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
And I didn't get a chance to speak with him, but we opened the show. It was when GE was playing guitar.
Oh yeah.
And I forget either Kenny or someone else.
Might have been Tony Garnier.
Tony Garnier.
Yeah.
And we were in Turku, Finland, and I remember Eric was playing, and Bob Dylan was at the point when Dylan was. He was just calling out. I don't know if he still does this, but he was just calling out songs. And I'm changing the set list right on the spot.
I think they have a set list.
He does that all the time.
They use his set list.
Yeah.
Chris was marvelous, man. He was just wow. I said that's a pro right there, man. He just kept swinging and grooving. He was great.
Yeah. He said to me, well, we rehearsed for about 4 days. Then we went out to San Francisco for our first gig with Dylan, and Neil Young showed up, and we didn't play any of the songs we rehearsed. It was all new stuff. So it was like 4 days we just threw away of all this. He said, "I'm glad." He said, "We were happy to know what we knew at that point, but once Neil showed up, it was like." It wasn't anything, with that we knew. We didn't know what was going to happen. So It was kind of cool. Bob Dylan was a big fan of Joe Cocker. So he would come to Joe Cocker rehearsals and hang out. And, and just as an adoring fan, at one point he sat in with us at rehearsal. And I remember we were doing 7 days. And I was Bob plugged in. And I was like, wow, this is a complicated song. I don't know if he's going to get this. And I went, oh, shit, he wrote it. Oh, yeah. We had some really funny moments. So I might as well tell you, we went back to the hotel after hanging out. And Joe was on TV doing the 50th anniversary of the Apollo. And he was singing with Patti LaBelle. Patti LaBelle at that point was wearing that sort of outer space stuff with epaulets and gold lame, and her hair was almost straight up. It was like this giant mohawk that she had. And me and Bob were sitting on the edge of the hotel bed, smoking a joint. And I said to him, he was drinking a beer, and I just leaned into him without thinking about it very much. And I said, "Hair by Sherwin-Williams." and he
died.
He did a total spit take, with his beer, and I realized that hit his Midwestern sensibility, Sherwin-Williams paints and all.
But that's great.
I never played with him except for that rehearsal, but
wow.
Chris.
Eric, but you've played with everybody else. I mean, your career is remarkable.
Yeah,
and played with some of my favorite, like Ronson and Ian Hunter, and that stuff you did with him, and you mentioned Andy Pratt. I mean, that early record was just terrific. You've done amazing stuff.
So thank you. Yeah, been very, very lucky. I mean, things happen to odd ways. How we all have stories how we get gigs, and mine are so circuitous as a way to get a gig. With Joe Cocker, I called Michael Lang because I was looking for a place to practice drums in the middle of the winter, and my two daughters were like 5 and 6 years old, so I was either waking them up or they are all over me drumming. So I called Michael. I said, "Hey, is that place Tapoos open? Is it?" And he said, "I don't know if it has electricity. I'll call you back." And he called back right away, and he said, "Oh, Eric, there's no electricity there." He said, "I have good news and bad news." And I said, I'll take the bad news first. He said, "There's no electricity there." And I said, "Michael, thank you so much for even looking into it. I'll find a place, and thank you." And he said, wait. You want the good news? And I said, "Oh, sure. What?" He said, "You want to play with Joe Cocker?" And I went, "When?" And he said, "Pretty much immediately." And I went, yeah. I mean, sure. That was on Friday. On Sunday, I was in Tel Aviv at a stadium with Joe Cocker.
Wow.
Because it was such a fast turnover. Wow. And, it has something to do with drugs and drinking in a way, because B.J. Wilson, great drummer from Procol Harum, but those guys drank a lot. And Michael Lang said, every morning we got to find him. And Joe's hungover and his voice is getting ratty. And, as much as we love B.J. Wilson, he said, you don't drink, right? And I said, "No, I smoke pot, but I don't drink it." Perfect. So I got the gig partly on drums and partly on not being, someone who drank a lot,
But you did that for quite a few years, right? With Cocker, did you play with? You know Gene Black by chance?
I know that name. Yes, I do.
I know he wrote some songs with Joe. I played with him when I lived in L.A. And I wasn't sure if you two played together at all when you were doing that.
I don't know. Might have the name.
Keith Mack played. Keith Mack played with them as well.
Yes, but it might have been after me. It might have been right after. I was pretty early. I mean, I did him from. Let's see. After Winwood ended in '84, so Joe Cocker was 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, I think, up to the end of '88. Yeah. He switched management. He switched producers. I didn't really get along with the new producer, Charlie Midnight, wanted this very tight sounding thing. And we just come off the road. I felt like, I said to Joe, we can make a record that would sound like Mad Dogs and Englishmen with percussion and background vocals. And, I know what people are going to want to hear from you. Yeah. And they made the record they were going to make. But I told Michael Lang, I didn't really want to. I wanted, the thing was about staying in New York and not being in New York the whole time. So I was trying to stay in New York and get more sessions. I kept leaving. So I quit Joe after about whatever, in the end of '88, They called me back for one little U.S. tour, but I didn't do it. It was opening to the Guess Who. And I was like, no, I can't do that. Because, we've been playing stadiums in Europe. Right. I mean, a couple of times U2 opened to us. So, I mean, it was during their Joshua. I mean, we opened to them too, but there were a few places in Germany where they were the opening act to us, which was with Paul Young. So, he was great, though, by the way. Joe Cocker, what a great person. I mean, I never heard him raise his voice. He was the opposite of a prima donna. He was such a regular guy. Same with Winwood. Cool. Mr. Regular person, like no attitude at all. No chip on their shoulder. So pleasant.
I met Steve Winwood. I say Steve like he's my friend, but I met Steve Winwood at an award show. Oh, and he just started using a lot of we use a lot of mandolins and mandolas with the Hooters. And I remember he was talking to, it was me, I forget which other guy in the band he was talking to, probably Eric. and mentioning the fact that, he really liked the fact that we were augmenting this, rock thing that we were doing with mandolins. And he said that he was getting into that. And, and then, what was the album? Higher Life? High Life.
Back in the High Life. Yeah.
I mean,
back in the High Life. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you start hearing a lot of that stuff that he was doing. And he
yeah.
said, I was influenced. I was like, wow,
That's really
when
cool.
somebody like Steve Winwood, who's, someone that all of us has listened to since we were teenagers. And little did we know he was also a teenager at the time doing that stuff.
He wasn't much older than us. I know. It's incredible. It's incredible how much whatever his first record was, like 13 or something with,
having that voice, that voice that, as
speaking
teenager.
I was reading an interview, Eric, you did talking about that tour you did with Steve Winwood off of Ark of the Diver. And you said one of your favorite parts of the tour was getting to play Give Me Some Lovin' every night. And, and just that initial, the initial power of the song on drums. And you talk.
Great.
It was a lot of fun. He had altered it when we first joined to the Welcome to the Canteen version of Give Me Some Lovin', which was a different sort of rhythm, guitar based, but it was like that. And I asked him, I said, can we ever go back to the original one? And he did. And we never went back to the Canteen one then. It was so powerful. I also made him play Empty Pages. That was another list. And I just loved that song. And I was like, is there any way we can fit that in the set list? And he was like, oh, sure. We'll figure out a spot. Wow. We did it at sound check. And we had a job to do. We were supposed to be playing the music off Ark of a Diver and talking back to the night. So, anyway.
But you're pulling out your favorites. It's like, hey, can we do this? I get that. I'd want to do the same thing.
I'm sure.
I just love. Yeah, I love Eric. You come off as just a regular guy. And here you're casually saying, "I'm telling Steve Winwood what we're going to play at the show tonight," and I'm sitting on the bed sharing a joint with Bob Dylan. I mean, you're so nice. You're just like,
I mean, those are sort of the headlines. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff doesn't happen all the time, but it's worth retelling because it's like, oh my God, Bob Dylan! I made Bob Dylan have a spit take. It was like that part killed me, and it is true. Some of the moments I've had are, I mean, there's people who have done a lot more than I have, but I have been really lucky. It's true.
Yeah. But you're super talented, you're a great drummer, and you've got a good, you're probably somebody that people, a lot of times, like, you're just great to be around. I mean, just meeting you and hanging with you, I felt like I knew you forever. I was like, wow, I love this guy. So band people want to be around that. Because you know how much time we spend together on the road. It's like you got to have people you can vibe with and you feel good about being around. The last thing you want to do is be around somebody that makes you feel like shit. It's like, who wants that?
I mean, even on bands or even just the crew, you can see if someone on the crew's not happening, they're not going to be on the next tour. They're they're aggravating people or they're whining about stuff.
I've seen that happen. I've seen that go down. But not necessarily with us, but other crews and stuff like what happened to that guy? He was gone yesterday.
That's right.
It's like because you need that up. Not that every people have to. But it's nice to be around people that are, have a great authenticness about themselves and I found that my advice to young musicians is that you have to think about not only being a player but how you vibe with people and get along. It's so important.
Yes,
so
very
important.
Very.
Might be more important.
Might be more important.
Well, it's true.
I mean, if you can get along, very well.
Yeah.
I mean, there used to be the musician's joke of like, "Hey, man, is that drummer good?" And you'd say, "He's a really nice guy." It was a way of saying he's maybe not being that good, but he's fun to hang out.
He's a really good guy.
He's a really good guy. That happens sometimes. But I've heard of drummers. In fact, with Joe Cocker, I won't mention names, who got fired because the crew didn't like him because he was pushy and he was annoying to the crew. And the crew went to management and they said, "We don't want this guy." And they went, "All right."
Wow.
For years, I gave Steve Holley any gig I didn't want. I'd give.
I love Steve.
I'd give to
love
Steve.
Him.
Yeah, he's still doing Ian Hunter. I gave him. I mean, quote unquote. Ian called me way back for but it was after Ronson had passed, and you know how that is. It was like an empty chair at the table. I couldn't go back without Ronson being there.
You know what? And you've had a lot of experiences with him. I had a crazy moment with Mick Ronson, who was like one of my favorite guitar players of all time.
Yeah,
a big Bowie fan from the Ziggy Stardust days, and we're playing in, I think it was Gothenburg in Sweden.
Oh yeah.
And we were doing our sound check, and there's no one in the venue but a sound guy and a guy with blonde, shaggy hair sitting like a few rows in front of the sound console.
Yeah.
And I noticed, I get off my drums and I walk off and I said, Mick Ronson, and he said, yeah, mate, it's, and I was just like, oh my God, it almost felt like I was in a dream, meeting one of my heroes,
Yes, that's so true.
Remarkable. And talk about a guy that was, just as humble as can be, and just a regular, Joe. It's hard to say Mick Ronson was Mr. Joe Beer Can, but I swear that's the way he came off,
Yes, very.
Right?
Yeah, totally. He was amazing, very low profile and really funny. I mean, really, really funny. And then him and Ian would be like a married couple. They'd pick on each other, which was kind of endearing. They knew each other well enough to really bug each other sometimes.
Yeah.
But Ian had a lot of great ideas. Like he would say the rhythm section should always room together. So me and Martin Briley always room together. Yeah. And it was almost like Brer Rabbit. They were saying, who wants to, because Martin was known to be, sort of tough to be around. But of course, he was just being a normal person. And we're still friends. We got along great. But he and Mick Ronson would room together. And then the two Tommies, the keyboard and the guitarist, Tommy Morangello and Tommy Mandel would room together, and then Georgie Myers and the light guy. Yeah, there was a really good idea to, even if we had the money, to still double up. So we weren't all getting off on our own thing,
That's awesome. That's great. That's awesome. So Ian Hunter, I got to ask, I also grew up, a big fan of Mata Hoople. I remember seeing them when Mick Ralphs was the guitar player. Yeah, I saw them. I guess I maybe the Tower, but I know I saw them at the Spectrum a number of times. And always musically, like, oh man, how cool would it be to do that or play that song? So he must have been an interesting cat to be around, and he's been at it forever, right?
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. It's amazing. He was much older than I realized when we were touring. He was almost in his 50s back in the 80s, because he's 80 something now, right?
Wow.
So, I mean,
still doing it.
Yeah. He had he had a real regimen. I should share with you guys.
Yeah.
He would get out of the tour bus about a mile short of the hotel
and walk.
In the bay of the bus were two suitcases just full of rocks. And so he would grab two suitcases and run with them. And soon Tommy Morangello joined him too. And we were calling them, both of them, thighs du mort, thighs of death. Because he would run with these rock suitcases and then, get in the shower and cool off and then go to sound check. But it became one of his routines, was like, he would be like, all right, let me out right here, and he'd get off. They'd open the bay doors. He'd grab his suitcases. Just, it was two suitcases that were full of rocks for that purpose only. That was it. Might have been bricks. I mean, maybe not all the way full, but they were heavy. And that was his workout. And,
wow.
I didn't realize until recently, like, shit, he was like 48 years old when he was doing that. Holy crap.
Wow.
But he was a great performer. And, honestly, a good thing for a drummer, I learned a real lesson with him I should share with you, because
I'd love to hear it. Love to hear it.
A real personal growth, because we played opening to Blue Oyster Cult up at the Orpheum, I think, in Boston. Semi big, like a Radio City.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know the venue.
Right, the Orpheum. I think it was that one. Anyway, we played. There was a big audience there. It was my first gig with Ian, and I was really excited about it. And I saw the front row of drummers all flagging me on, and I started, throwing in Mitch Mitchell licks and other stuff that I liked. I thought, oh man, they're reacting to me, and what fun! And we finished the show, and I went up and took a shower, and I was like, woo, man, I did it. I had a great gig. I got down to the bar, and And Ian said, "Hey, Eric, come on over here for a second." I went, "Sure." And I went, "Hey, man, how you doing?" He goes, "Hey, listen, if you're going to play like that, the way you played tonight, you can't be in this band." I went, "What?" And he said, "I need simplicity. You were playing for other drummers. I could hear it." And I was like, "Oh, my God."
Wow.
I said, oh, okay. You know, I got hot in the face because I was expecting lots of back patting, and man, you were great. No, it was a real reality check.
Yeah.
And from that moment on, it was all like simple single stroke rolls and as simple fills I could ever do. That just the minimal. And that's what he wanted. So it was a lesson learned. It was like you got to play, the kind of drumming to the music in which you're involved in. Instead of like I'm going to add what I wanted. I mean, I was still. To my defense, I was 20 years old or something.
Right.
I'm pretty young.
You're learning.
But it was shocking. I mean, I was like, "Oh my God," totally.
When you've played with as many different people as you have, and everybody has different expectations for the drummer. I mean, as opposed to Dave, who obviously has side projects, but he's been with the Hooters for 45 years.
Yes.
You, on the other hand, Eric, have played with all these different people. Is that a challenge for a drummer? Because somebody else might have loved what you did that night. I mean,
no, it is. It really could be. And I got a little bitter about that. With Ian, I thought, man, if I was with Jimi Hendrix, he would have loved it, but because I was a kid. But it's a bit like acting where I do a lot of homework for any project. Like a guy, I'm about to do a record next week. Send me everything you got. Tell me what you want it to sound like. Give me any reference records that you're hoping this is going to sound like. So, and because my aim is to please. And at a completely, I feel like a janitor level, of just like trying to make this thing work any way I can. And when I come up with that attitude, it suddenly took the pressure off. It was funny. Years ago, I used to get sessions and go, "Great, I have a session Friday." And then Thursday be like, "Oh man, I got a session." And one day I caught myself going, "Wait, you can't want sessions and then also not want sessions. Like, do your work." And then that just made me get into it instead of like, "Oh, I got to learn all these songs now."
Right.
Instead, I jumped into it. I'm like, "Give me everything you got as soon as you got." Like a kid in school who's going to raise his hand in class, any question, and that's really helped me get a lot of work. And just, I was telling Brian Mitchell the other day on his record, I said, "Well, I'm a reactive drummer. I react to what I'm hearing. That's the best way I can explain it. Because even if we're playing 2 and 4, Dave, that it's like if I'm with Cornell Dupree, it's going to sound a certain way, and the same 2 and 4 is going to sound different with Ian Hunter and or Lou Reed, whoever. It's just about who you're around. But I bet the challenge.
It's interesting 2 and 4 because Freddie, my buddy Fred down here, he for years played with Amos Lee.
Nice.
He spent a lot of time in Woodstock and. He's the king of the 2 and 4. This guy right here. He just lays it real. You would love it. You'd love his playing.
That's I bet I would.
You're mentioning some names, some people. Brian Mitchell's great keyboard player. I met him up at the barn. And I grew up with Mike Merritt.
Oh, nice, Mike Merritt.
Since teenagers, we played together.
Oh, that's. Yeah, it's great player.
He's back up in. I'm not sure if he's in Hudson Valley, but he's up. He moved back to.
He moved back up here. Oh, that's good to know. Yeah.
Yep.
Did those guys have to move out west for the Conan show?
They did. Yeah.
I know Jimmy Vivino works with John Sebastian a lot, who's sort of, kind of the top of the musical pyramid here still.
Yeah. I met John at the bar.
Yeah, I met him in Woodstock as well. Matter of fact, he sat in with us that night we played in Woodstock.
I remember that.
I had dinner with them that night, and I remember he was asking me. He was another one that asked me. He said, "How do you do it?" about Robert. I told him what I told you. I make myself invisible if that's possible on the drums.
He told me that night. He said Robert was he was taking alcohol pills like Keith Moon was taking, except then he drank on top of it, which made it because he got really nervous.
Antabuse. He was taking Antabuse, and he was like on a bar, and I was like, "Dude, what are you doing?"
Same stuff, the same shit Keith Moon died on. It was just if you drink on it. But I could see he was. I played with Robert years ago in New York just for a benefit. He was, it was a normal gig, but I could see the night he was kicking at the monitors. It was like a scary sound check with an audience involved. But John said, he told me afterwards, he apologized that he got winged out. He got really worried. So he drank and, he went sideways. It was too bad.
Which is an odd thing because he was really so unique. Robert was such a unique artist. No one sounded like him, and certainly nobody did that rockabilly thing the way he did. And anytime I got a chance to play Black Slacks or Red Hot, play with him, it felt like I was playing with the guy that really sang and knew that swing groove. It was like, oh man, he was great. But then he had that one side of him that was like the demonic. It was like, where's he going here?
That's right.
So where's the monitor guy? I want to kill him.
That's totally right. No, it's true. It's like an evil David Johansen. You're like, wait a minute, David's like that, except he's really funny. He gets weird and wackier. He doesn't get mad. But you did great. That's great, Fred. I didn't know that you were here. Do you come back and forth? Because the barn is
my good friend Zach Janikian, he lives on Abbey Road, I think. He brought me up to the barn, and I played a series of Christmas benefits. They do a holiday benefit every year.
Yes.
So Gail Ann Dorsey was there. Like, you said, everybody lives up there.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I was in line. One of my best stories is in line at the health food store, and I'm behind Dr. John, and I'm in front of Sonny Rollins, and ahead of Dr. John by two people is David Bowie.
Yeah.
Like, only in this town. Those three guys in the same line at the health food store,
And Dr. John was Amy's stepdad for years, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah. And then Donald Fagen, Donald Fagen.
Yes.
Libby
I met
Titus.
him. He's married to Libby. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Insane. And doesn't seem like when I was driving through that town, like I remember thinking I was waiting for it to be really big, and I'm going, it's not a big town.
No,
it's like not. Amazing. It's like but artists per capita. You got a lot of them there, and it's just But everybody there was just so down to earth and nice, and
Yeah.
I mean, I got offered 10 places to stay when I was there.
I would bet so. Yeah.
It was great.
Very friendly here.
Really
I know what Bowie said when he moved here. It had such gravitas. He said, everyone leaves you alone. He said, the mountains and the water is beautiful. So, I mean, he had a great, Taylor Swift just bought his house. So now she has a place here. That's sort of underground news. But that's, no one knows except the realtor and a few people who live up here, a couple producer friends of mine who I know.
Wow.
Like, oh my God.
That's cool though, that she would like to get, an artist of what she's doing today, and that she wants to get away and be in a place, an artist community like that. That understands that, there's so much she could still learn from these veteran people that have done it for all their lives. And, I mean, talking about a powerful artist. Oh my goodness.
Yes, it's amazing.
Crazy.
And a lot of people, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. So a lot of people, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying that a lot of people moved here because of during COVID and then just stayed here. When COVID happened, my road, which is a dead end road, became there was like a parade of people going down every day. And a lot of them just stayed here. They moved here because they loved it. When they found out they could work here and not have to go back to the office in New York, they stayed. And then a lot of them were other musicians. A lot of my new work is from people I've never heard of. They're making their first record and that kind of stuff. So but it's true.
Are you do you have a recording set up at your house? Or are you going to studios to do your work? What are you doing?
I've almost always go to studios. I've only once or twice ever used my place here, just because it takes a lot of mic setup. And although I have a vaulted ceiling, it has a naturally good sound here. I've only done two. I done a thing for Ken Burns here for the Civil Wars, but it was all what do you call it? All Foley sounds. It was the sound. I had to play a snare drum as if it was dawn, and I played the snare drum in my back bathroom with both doors closed, so it sounded really far away with a blanket on it.
Oh, cool.
And what else did I have to do? Oh, I moved my fire tools around so it sounded like horse stirrups and things like that.
Man.
And some walking in the snow, but that's all I've ever done for something of that large. Or like, I'm working for Ken Burns.
I love that. But you made it authentic, and I love that thought of seeing you do that. Like, that's kind of I don't know. It's a bit of a lost art these days with, the way people record in the box. And it's just like, I remember trying to, like you mentioned, the ideas Nick would have for, he was the first guy, like that drum sound on that record. I listened to it recently because I thought we might play some of those songs when we did the Winkle benefit, and that record still holds up, man.
Really good.
Put it on, it's like, oh my God, and the drums sound phenomenal on
really nice. Yeah, we detuned the snare. They're all mixed match, but they sounded really groany toms.
Yes.
The floor tom was like a 3-minute boom.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't block it up. No gas.
No, he would make it work.
Just make that work as it was. But he had lots of great ideas. He had the one that really got me. He played piano, but he also had a hammer. No, let's see. He had a brick on the sustain pedal of a piano, a full grand piano at the studio. Then he played hammer dulcimer with the mic in the piano, so it had the harmonics of the piano strings as well as it's in the middle of the ballad. I can't remember this. I'm spaced out on the name, but it's the only real ballad pretty ballad on the record.
Well, anybody's watching the podcast now, they just got to go look up Nick's record on Spotify or iTunes or YouTube, because I know it's on YouTube, and you can check it out, man. It's like,
it's I ain't
great
listening anymore. That's the record. It's in the middle of that. You can hear all this beautiful hammer dulcimer piano thing. It's like, sounds like a Chinese orchestra came in. It's like, man, where did you think of that? He was such a genius. Still is, I'm sure. But
still doing great stuff.
I ain't searching the American Dream
song.
Yes. He recut that.
He recut it. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. It's very much like the American Dream version of the arrangement. Even the feel of it, but great it was Nick singing. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And I remember you playing it live, and it was like off the charts great.
Wow.
It's really good, I mean,
it's so good. And all his Foghat years too. I mean, suddenly he's a Foghat producer and bass player and songwriter, and I mean, that Fool for the City is one of their best records. It's all
that's right. He played bass. Bass and
really good bass.
That's right.
Yeah, and he ended up touring with them playing bass as well, I think. He did that
definitely.
too.
Yeah, he was in the band for a little while. We had his Tony Otita was his Foghat's manager and our manager as well. So Roger Earl and those folks would come by our rehearsals and whatnot. In fact, I have a couple drum beats that Nick and I named Roger Earl. Where you're playing at the top of the bar is two snare hits. So you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, ba-ba, boop, but you ba-ba, boop, like totally inside, totally inside out. We're like, I love that.
Yeah.
And he just sat on the drums and did that one day. I was like, God, that's like an inverted funk beat. It's so cool.
Yeah.
So of course I had to steal it. I tried to put it where I can. But those guys would come to gigs and hang up. We had their road crew too, way back when we were touring. We were touring with Bob Seger and Rush. I think Rush
was that with Cocker?
That was with Nick Jameson.
And Nick was playing.
Yeah, we opened to Bob Seger, and I think Rush was open to Bob Seger. I think Rush wasn't that big yet.
Yeah, so, and I think you even played. I think you did some dates with the Heartbreakers, Tom Petty as well. Nick told
Heartbreakers
me.
as well. Yeah, and we had a couple of Blue Oyster Cult, a couple other hookups that were like that. But I remember after the gig, we were at the hotel, and people came by my room for autographs. And I said, no, I'm not anybody. I'm just the drummer in the first band. And they sort of walked away disappointed. And Ron, the manager from Foghat, came up to me and he said, no, you signed everything. You signed, this means a lot to them. He made me go to the room with these kids and sign the drum head.
Wow.
It was a learning curve. You're like, no, this means, you're not a nobody to them.
Had I known, I would have come and had you sign a drum head for me at the beach. I mean, I was so blown away. I remember I was just like, that's the way it's done. I remember that was a really, I still, there's certain shows that you see. I mean, this is 1978, so we're talking like almost 50 years ago that I saw you guys play, and I still remember that show. I remember seeing it, thinking, man, that's the way it's done. I mean, I go see the gigs, and Hey, so let me ask you. So when you were in Woodstock, did you frequent when you came into New York? Would you go to Eppolito's drum shop or the modern drum shop, Joe Casadas across the street?
Oh yes, often.
You go to those places?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. I mean, some of it was like giving away or selling cymbal cases from Pisces that I didn't need. You know how you get, David, where you end up acquiring so many road cases that it's crazy. I mean, I used to go to those places all the time, and both places, because they had great stuff there. And they would swap things too. Chris and I found this bass drum and snare drum at a flea market, and the bass drum had a painting on it. It was really beautiful, like a Levon helm thing. So and I said I'd take the snare drum, and so I took the snare drum, and it had plastic wood paper on the outside of it, so it made it look like it was a wood snare, but it wasn't. I took it off. It was engraved brass. So I gave it. Chris said, all right, I'm going to need that snare now, and we swapped back. He kept the bass drum. He gave me 2 Superphonics for that snare. And then he sold it to Frank Eppolito for $2,000.
Wow.
So it was it was 1948, Radio King. Yeah. We had everything was all engraved, every part of it. It was quite amazing.
Do you remember a drum collector named Charlie Donnelly?
Sure. I used to buy his Radio Kings in Connecticut off him all the time.
Connecticut, right? Oh, Charlie. Yeah. So anytime I'd show up, like we were on tour, or he'd show up at Fred. This guy would be an Andy. He'd show up at an arena, and he'd come in with these cases of cases of snare drums.
Yes.
Like I had this. I think it was a 1928 Leedy that Matt Frenette actually bought for me. The drummer for Loverboy actually bought it and gave it to me. I mean, they were making a lot of money then, so he's like, "Here," and I was like, "Oh my God," take this snare drum, and it was like. It's so amazing. But Charlie had a whole family would show up, and they had just cases of these ridiculous drums.
Yes. I bought a deep dish Radio King, the 8-inch Radio King, for Ian Hunter. I was using the deepest ones I could find from Charlie, and one of them got split down the rim. Like as you look down, it was splitting down the rim. And I told Charlie, I said, it has the weirdest crack in it. It's down the middle of the drum. And he said, I'll bring it to me and I'll repair it. And he gave me another drum. And he said, I can't really repair it. So you take this one. And I thought, that is so Charlie to do this. He's the sweetest guy in the world. He would drive up to Woodstock with a load, like you said, like a van full of different drums. And I'd buy 2 out of 6 and be like, feel guilty. Like I should have bought more. That's so cool. You knew him too. Great guy.
Oh yeah. He, I was able to buy a few things from him. I adored him. I thought he was just a sweetheart, really great music guy, and one of those guys that just loved the, drum making and drums, and he was just a really wonderful person. Totally. So I'm gonna ask a little bit about your brother. When your brother was doing the gig with Gat, when they were doing stuff.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever get out to see? Like I'm guessing Steve from over the years, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So we saw him a lot. Yeah.
I mean, that's great. Now to YouTube, you can see these old videos, but your brother, because I was just talking to somebody about Will Lee, about how great what a great singer Will is, because Will would sing all the lead vocals with the stuff. Yeah. With stuff, he was the guy.
And the Brecker brothers, And
the Brecker, that's it. The Brecker brothers. He did the vocals on that stuff.
That's right. Man. Yeah. Really nice.
Wow.
Jingles too. Tons of jingles.
Tons of jingles. He said he told me he made more money off the Be All That You Can Be Army campaign than he made all year on David Letterman. And I was like, because he sang lead vocal on it and it wouldn't stop playing. He said, I bought my house and a pool off that jingle.
Right on. Oh my God.
You know, we did a bunch of jingles together with a guitarist who's sadly not with us, Jeff Gollop.
I know Jeff. I knew Jeff. Oh, my goodness.
We started doing this Miller beer campaigns. Remember when Miller had like old rusty signs in gas stations? We did Elvis. We did all this sort of rockabilly sort of music. And it was always me, Will, and Jeff.
Wow. What a player.
I went to see stuff a lot when Chris and Steve were playing with. First, it was just Chris. And then he went to go see Steve Gadd with Joe Farrell, I think. And they were talking afterwards. And he was like, I mean, I love doing Joe Farrell, but I'd love to do more R&B and rock stuff. I don't want to be a jazz guy necessarily. Wow. And he said, come on up and sit in with stuff. You'll love it. And Chris was like, I'm actually free that night. We'll both play. It's not a problem. And that's how that started. He said, before stuff, it was called Gordon Edwards Encyclopedia of Soul. And it still had those guys, but with Chris. And then when Chris and Steve joined, it was like, oh my God, you know. Yeah. Chris said, you knew the room was good when drinks started getting knocked over, you know, from people grooving so hard that tables were rocking and drinks were falling. But that was insane, you know. So it was a real pleasure to play with Cornell and Richard years afterwards. I'm like, I'm actually playing with these guys now, you know, and because they were just, I mean, you know, I tell them all the time. I said, if I saw your name on a record, I would buy the record. I didn't care who it was. It was always going to be good.
I was in New York once. You played the Lone Star, right?
Oh yes, yeah.
I think I came. I was in my old drinking days, getting loaded. I came in a Lone Star, and I think you were playing, and I didn't get a chance to say hello, but you know, I remember that venue being like,
yes, very much so. Wow. Yeah, that was great. The little one and the Roadhouse, the one in Midtown the bigger one was also really cool. Played there with Mick Taylor and Horn. There was a live video that I did with
Mick Taylor.
I think with a Rolling Stone, but
I know someone laughed at me the other day. I said the last time I did cocaine was with Mick Taylor. Mick Taylor. Like, nice way to finish cocaine. Yeah. But it was just accidental, really.
Did you enjoy your playing? Did you enjoy playing with Mick Taylor? That must have been cool, right?
Oh, very much so. And I Bernard Purdie had the gig, but Purdie left for an Aretha record or something big. And so then they called me, and if Shane was in the band, that's how I got. Shane was staying overnight with me, and he said, "Look, we might be changing up drummers because Purdie's got to leave. Would you be into it?" And so we met up at SIR the next day and played with Max Middleton and Wilbur Bascom and me. And
wow!
And it was so great. I mean, it's like that famous thing. They made me sound good. I didn't do anything special at all, but they were cooking so nice.
Max Middleton. I mean, I met Max. I played Out on the Green, that festival in Switzerland.
Oh yeah,
and remember that big they would have it. I remember.
Yes. Like their Glastonbury. I remember that.
So I got to know Simon Phillips pretty well. And Simon said that we were backstage. He said, "You want to meet Max Middleton?" I was like, "Oh my God, yeah." I remember meeting. I felt like I was meeting royalty, you know, like, oh my God. Situation, all those great Beck records.
Oh my God.
Got to feel all that stuff. Ice cream cakes. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's so amazing. I had hopes I never got to play with Jeff Beck. I saw him a whole bunch. I never met him. None of nothing intimate. But I thought if I'm playing with Max and Wilbur and
you were that close. You were that close.
I'm like, I'm playing it. Fernando Saunders. He was with him, and he was the Winwood band. I'm like, I'm right. I'm so close to.
No, that ain't bad either. The Winwood. That's pretty.
You know, during COVID, I taught myself double bass drum. I thought, what if Jeff Beck calls? I better know. All right, I'm going to learn fucking double bass drum. I better. Right. If he calls, I don't do that. Right.
You have to. You know, it's funny that you mentioned that because I did the same thing with the double bass thing. It's like I got to learn how to do this. And then one day, and I found it to be. It benefited my playing. You know, it's weird. Even my playing to learn to play double helped my single.
Yes, I understand what you mean.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's like all of a sudden my hi-hat I became absolutely a lot more proficient with my hi-hat.
Yes.
But I found it to be a lot of fun going back and forth between with the hi-hat and my bass drum, you know?
Yeah.
It was super cool, you know. That's cool that you did that.
Yeah, it's really fun. And you're so right. The left foot then has this new articulation.
Yes.
You know, you can do those little hi-hat hits before the one on jazz.
Yes.
You know, like little things I never thought of even doing before.
Yeah.
Like with that bass drum exercise.
Yeah.
You know. And then I was just making up shit in the beginning. I had like a power samba where it's a samba, but the left bass drum is not a hi-hat. It's a bass drum.
Have you checked out? I just have to have this in front of me, and we were talking about bass drum, but my drum tech in Europe. I don't know if you've seen these beaters yet.
No.
But I used it on this tour, and I was using it stock. I at first I didn't. Yeah. But then all of a sudden, like I don't know, it just like at first I had to get used to the feel of it and just the way it hit the head. Yes. But now I love it. I really love it. And it gives you a little more bottom end too.
Yeah.
But I found I'm telling you, my very first reaction to it was like, but then when I used it to a gig, I got used to it. And now I brought two. I have two of them, you know, that I brought back because they're badass. You know?
How is the weight? Is the weight heavy? Does it's heavier?
You know, it's kind of not that much because it's really a lot like the DW beater, but it gives you more bottom end than that beater.
Yes,
but I found it to be pretty damn cool. You know,
that's really amazing. Yeah,
it's amazing. Like I remember Jeff Chonis over at that Drum Paradise in LA when he turned me on to those bomber beaters. Man, it was like a stem with the little rubber piece in front of it. I started using those guys. You know,
what's that like? How does that feel?
That was kind of cool because like at the time I was like really kind of just laying my foot and letting that bass drum kind of lay into it. And now I play a little bit differently now, but I remember at the time it felt good to use and the weight felt good, you know.
Nice. Yeah.
I could feel it was there. You know, the worst thing for me is not having if I have a beater that's too light.
Yes.
It's like, you know, it's the kiss of death for me. I need to have a little bit of something that I can really feel. This thing has been perfect.
That's great.
I really like it, you know. So
yes, that makes sense.
Yeah,
the stem length can alter a whole thing too. If I sit down at somebody's drum set and the bass drum stem is long, it's like whoa. You know,
what's going on? Yeah,
I feel like I can't play. Articulation on it, you know.
All right. So, do you have any plan? Are you out on the road? Are you going out to do any? Are you doing any road dates coming up?
No, just records. I was with the Poussette Dart Band, and they do. I still am, but they only do like 2 or 3 or 4 dates a year. You know, not very much. So it's. But that's the only stuff I do up in New England. I haven't done. My girlfriend lives in London, so I've been going to London a lot, back and forth, and played at a studio there. I wasn't really thinking about trying to work there. There's a nice music scene there that's up and coming that I like. A lot of individual, interesting, original music, folk singers and other players and that kind of jazz. So. But I don't have any plans. You know, I always have a little joke, which is like, I would go on the road if it was something good. I mean, if I used to tour with Bonnie, Bonnie called, you know, I know, what's his name? I know her drummer. And he's
Jeff.
He's like, he's bolted onto that drum set.
Yeah, I know. It's a great gig. Yeah. You know what? It's a great gig. When you know you have a great gig, I feel the same way with my gig. I know what I'm doing. I just like, you know, I just, you know, you know, I try to be inventive as possible, but you know what I mean? It's like, I'm comfortable. You know, we all know that find that gig that feels comfortable, but then again, you need to be out of your comfort zone to grow, you know, so I'm always looking for stuff to do, you know, so.
Yeah, Eric, you brought up. Go ahead. Oh, I'm just going to say, because we unfortunately we have to wrap up. It's already been an hour.
Oh, Jesus!
Oh
my God!
You brought up Bonnie Raitt at the very. I wanted to ask about Bonnie Raitt. We didn't talk about Lou Reed. I mean, we got to have Eric back because there's John Sebastian, John Hall.
Oh my God!
Yeah, check out Eric's website just to read some of the people he's played with, and he's got a great story with all his brothers playing drums and all the different bands you played with. And we could definitely do another hour easy. But check it out at Eric-Parker.com.
You were great, man. You know, I don't know where you were shy once.
I'm still shy.
Oh well, you were what a wonderful guest. What a wonderful guest, man.
Thank you very much.
You know, we just to say we really admire what you do. It was really amazing, and I'll give you a shout. We'll get you back.
I would love to. I'd love to. It's been an absolute pleasure. Great meeting you all, and great to talk with you again, David. Lovely.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks so much, Eric.
You're
David, Fred, I'm Andy. We'll see you next time on In the Pod.